And what else?
Oh, we already started. And hello, and welcome to episode 232 of Sutton Impact Family Style. We're coming to you a little earlier this week with hurricanes hitting my way. So, you get an early show.
Yep. And I'm headed to Seattle, and I'm going to go, as I said last week on the show, I'm going to the big Seattle Sounders Portland Timbers match on Sunday night. And Bernie told me I had to remind myself that it's a match and they play on a pitch. But Ted Lasso teaching me that, so I'm golden.
I was like, that's Mom's favorite show is Ted Lasso. You've watched enough now, and I think they sprinkle enough real football in there for people to get some stuff, right?
Yeah, they do. And they play at Crystal Palace, which I've been to, so I recognize that.
Yes, very nice.
Well, let's jump right into our football first.
Okay.
I'm in a real football mood tonight.
Yeah, we're getting so close.
Yeah,
so
we are.
close.
It's awesome. So, you want to start at the top or the bottom of this division?
Let's change it up and let's go top, because the top's more exciting.
Okay.
I would not bet on them, but my pick to win this division is a team I could see winning the Super Bowl, and that's the Tennessee Titans.
And I'm 100% with you. That team's going to dominate this division. This division is a very uneven division, mainly because of the questions at quarterback of the other three teams.
Exactly. But you figure you got Derrick Henry, you have a nice tight end, you added Julio Jones to go along with A.J. Brown, give you a nice wide receiver duo. When you look at the stats, and it's still hard to believe, and I'm not sure why it's hard to believe, but Tannehill has been like the second best quarterback in football after Patrick Mahomes the last 3 seasons, statistically speaking. He throws for the most yards per pass, most air yards, meaning he's throwing the ball furthest downfield. I think he has like 67 touchdowns and only 14 turnovers in the last 3 seasons. He's been really good and really consistent, and I'm not sure if we just hold against him all those bad Miami years where he was hurt and he played for a bad coach, but he's been doing it long enough now that...
He's a different player in Tennessee than he was in Miami.
Yeah.
And, it's with everything else. As he's had success, he's become more confident. And he's less rattled. When you're less rattled, it's less turnovers and more bigger plays.
And he did play for Adam Gase.
Really well.
Yeah, who has been a pretty terrible coach.
So my biggest question for Tennessee is Bud Dupree going to have an impact?
I want to root for Bud Dupree and say that he will, because for all the Steeler, I don't know what you would call him, because he really was a one-year wonder as far as statistically going.
Year and a half.
In a half. But he wasn't It was disappointing that they took him as the 24th overall pick, but he played his ass off. And, he did the best. I think I never questioned his effort or his work ethic or, it seemed like he was doing the best he could. It just took him a while to develop in. But then he's playing opposite TJ Watt against a defensive line that has Tuitt, Alou, and Cam Hayward. And, he's getting the scraps.
They're looking for him to come in and be the A player. I don't know if he's an A player. He's a solid B player. I don't know if he's an A player. No. And so I'm rooting for him too. I just don't know if he's got it to be that player. And if he does, that's great. It's great for the Titans, and maybe the Steelers will get a better comp pick than the third round pick.
Well, the third is the highest you can get comp wise.
Well, that's what they're going to get.
Yeah, so that's a good one. I mean,
yeah.
The other thing is he is coming off the torn ACL, so
we'll see how it usually takes a while to round in shape after that too.
It does, but I think they're going to be able to move the ball on offense, obviously through the air and the ground. They're going to be able to put the ball away with Derrick Henry. And then obviously, like we talked about, or we haven't talked about yet, but we'll talk about with these next 3 teams, they could very easily be 6-0, win their division, and, on their way to a pretty nice playoff seed without doing a lot.
Agreed. I don't see them losing a game. They might lose one game in a division. That would be an upset, but they should be favored every game in their division.
Yeah, they should at the very least end up, 5-1 would be the worst record they should come out of the division.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm looking at them as like a 13-4, even a 14-3 team.
That sounds so weird. I know we're going to the 17th game, but
I know.
Because when I was looking at over-unders already this year, I was like, wait, what? Oh, yeah, okay, that does make more sense. We have a whole extra game, so that's where that extra win comes from, where that extra loss comes from.
Well, number 2, I've got the Indianapolis Colts.
Well coached.
Only because of default. I think Carson Wentz will have a better year. I don't know how sold I am on Carson Wentz. Even with Frank Reich.
Yeah.
I don't know. I root for the guy because he did that shirt for Brewster,
Yes.
and I like that, and so I'm a real passionate about him and wanting him to be successful, and hopefully he can. But a lot of questions there, a lot of questions.
Well, you look at him, and he
Have a
basically,
good offensive line,
yeah,
and have a decent defense.
well
I'm just
coached.
not overly impressed.
No. Jonathan Taylor really come on at the end of last year, but that was against some pretty crappy defenses. But they have a very talented running back squad. You hope Michael Pittman Jr. becomes the A, and that the other receivers fill in behind him, because I think T.Y. Hilton has probably played his last day as a number one wide receiver.
Yeah, I think he's like where Hines Ward was toward the end of his career with the Steelers.
Yeah. But much like Bud Dupree, when you look at the entire Carson Wentz experience, it's really a sprinkling of good games, 9 good games in a season, and then he got hurt, as they made the playoffs. So it's like, I think he's going into year 6, and he's maybe put together an entire good season.
Yeah.
And you hate to see it, but he's coming off the Lysick fracture, and now he's back practicing again. But Quentin Nelson, who is by far their best player, which is, a guard, but still an interior guard that's an absolute mauler out of Notre Dame, he also had the Lysick fracture. And I think he's supposed to be back too, but when you get that foot thing,
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to come back from that.
it's hard to come back from that.
And and Travis Etienne has it now too.
And he's gone for the year.
He's gone for the year.
Yeah, they just shelved him. But I think that's, as we
It's
get...
smart with that team. I mean, why would you bring him back? You're not going to. It's not like him being there this year means anything.
No, he's a running back. Not to say it's all instinct, but he's a 4-year starter at Clemson. He's an All-American player. He can just do mental reps on the sideline and save his body for when they're a little bit better and ready to compete. It's almost better in a long way.
You're banking a year of his body until the team can be better. It's actually a smart move.
I think so. I liked it. I was like, when I put him on there, I was like, I didn't draft him in fantasy, so I didn't feel that bad. But also, from a standpoint of, I just think career-wise, it just makes more sense for him. Don't rush him back or try to get him in the last 4 games of the year and hope he plays well. And you know what you got in him.
So who do you have third in this division?
Well, despite my love of Tyrod Taylor, I got Jacksonville coming in third.
Whoa.
I think they're going to start off terrible. But I think the Texans will also start off terrible. I think both these teams will probably be... They're both going to definitely be picking in the top 10, if not top 5. They're 2 of the worst teams in football. But I have to go with, and as much as I didn't like some of the Tebow stuff, and I'm not a big Urban Meyer guy, he is a winner. He's only, he's won 3 national championships. He's won 167 games, only lost 32 games in his career. He won at Utah. He won at Florida. He won at Ohio State. And, and then you have the quarterback that everybody says the floor on him is a 10 to 12-year NFL starter with a couple of Pro Bowls. And I think it's going to be rocky at first, but I think they're going to, I think they're in garbage time at the end of the season. I think they'll win 3 or 4 games. And I think that's one more game than the Texans will end up winning.
I'm probably going to go with Houston in my third spot because I watched Jacksonville the other night, and he was Trevor Lawrence was like a punching bag. You can't do that. And I realized they had a couple guys out, but they still had 3 of their starting offensive linemen in there, and they weren't blocking anybody. And look, they made the opposition look like the fearsome foursome and the purple people eaters and the steel curtain all into one that game. They didn't block anybody.
Yeah, like I said, I think both these teams are going to be terrible.
Yeah, I'm looking. I can see Houston winning 6 games. I could probably see Jacksonville winning 4 or 5.
And I guess,
Maybe 7. Houston has some other nice pieces. I'm not a big Tyrod Taylor fan, but on the other hand, he's got absolutely. It's the first time Tyrod Taylor's probably been in a situation where he's got nobody breathing down his neck. Like he's not holding the position down for anybody. It's his job.
Well,
and I think that'll be good for him.
Unless Deshaun Watson, of course.
That ain't happening.
You don't think he's coming back at any point this year?
Nope.
Okay. I was like, he's sort of the caveat Elliott, the elephant in the room, because he's so good on the football field. I'll just leave it at that. That,
he's very good.
He's worth a couple of wins.
Once they resolve it, he'll be suspended for the rest of the year.
I think you have to at this point.
Absolutely. I don't think you can count on them at all. And then I think they'll trade him. They'll trade him next year.
It's kind of, I mean,
Bring him back.
obviously you never want to trade. Once all the stuff came out, you weren't going to trade him regardless. Nobody was going to touch him.
Right.
And then when you had him and people wanted him, it seemed like you could have got, maybe one of the biggest hauls in NFL history for him. And, given your Rocky franchise and his relationship with that team, and I know you never want to trade away, a Pro Bowl quarterback or a Pro Bowl in any way, especially in their prime, a 25-year-old franchise quarterback, something you don't want to trade. It seemed like that situation was, they already looked bad. It was almost an untenable situation before the lawsuits came out. And it seems like they should have washed their hands of him and already been moving on towards their future as opposed to having this albatross hanging around their necks.
Well, they just waited too long.
Yeah. And I get it. I mean,
similar vein, the Pirates had Felipe Vasquez, who was the dominant closer, and they didn't pull the trigger on trading him, and then he went to jail for statutory rape for 4 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got nothing. And, I don't know what you're going to get for Deshaun Watson if he sits out a year. I don't know what you get for him. I don't think you get a 1 for him.
I think you might still get 2-1. I mean, if depending on how this legal,
2 1s, no way.
I think if
You might get a 1 and something else, but you're not going to get 2 1s anymore.
I think it depends how this legal situation plays out. I mean, you have teams like Philadelphia that I think have 4 number 1 picks over the next 2 seasons, and that's an organization that is not sold on their starter. So,
Right.
And a very impatient fan base. Like if he's able to get through this, it's hard to imagine. The lawsuits are pretty graphic and terrible. So we may never see him play again, for all I know. But
Yeah.
if he's able to escape this, or it turns out, he is, whatever. We talked about him. We won't bring that up again. But
This, to me, might be the most clear-cut division in the NFL.
yeah, I think so.
I mean, it's just clean. I mean, unless Tennessee has massive injuries and Indianapolis plays above what I think they're capable of, there's no way they don't win this.
Agreed. And along the lines of holding on to your trade asset for too long, Philadelphia, Ben Simmons, let's figure something out. Because I get, because they kept changing GMs, changing coaches, and you see Ben Simmons and you want to keep him, and you think this is a good pairing, and each coach and each GM is like, no, I'm going to be the one that figures him out.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at what they could have gotten from him 2 years ago, and when you have a guy like Joel Embiid that, probably has a shorter shelf life than most NBA players, I think that should have been a trade they pulled the trigger on before. And now that he's talking about he won't even come to camp, and they're not talking, and Doc Rivers threw him under the bus, and he and Joel Embiid don't get along, like, I don't know what you can get for him now.
You're going to trade your problem for somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to get. You're going to get somebody else that's not happy where they are, and you're going to swap it. Hopefully it works out for both teams that they get happy wherever they end up.
Yeah.
But you got to look at the money involved, and you got to find things that fit. And usually what happens is it's somebody that's not happy.
It's true. Although you look at the smart teams, and I'll just throw, everybody likes to hate on them, but, from a GM standpoint, if you look at the Marcus Smart extension, the Al Horford contract extension, the Schroeder contract, they've added a nice chunk of contracts that now add up to a superstar in Boston as well.
Yeah.
And that's a team that certainly doesn't mind, giving away future picks. So.
And now we'll see how the coach that moved upstairs at the general manager spot, see how he does in that role.
Indeed we will. Well, let's switch to some interesting basketball news. You said you're not that familiar with the Overtime League, correct?
Well, I'm familiar with the Overtime League, but not these recent developments.
Okay, they are paying. They don't have the kid from France yet, who's supposed to be, the next big player. But they're paying over $1 million to 3 or 4 different players right now, just to go right into their league. And I guess obviously, and besides, giving really good money, they have, some incredibly rich financial backers behind them. And then they also have influencers, and they have rappers with them. Like Drake's involved in this league. Wale's involved in this league. And not that you could ever think, I don't see it, making ripples big time. But I think when you look at a league like the Overtime League that's willing to go above and beyond what the G League is willing to pay, You look at now, the college players can be compensated for their time, essentially, in college. And they can make money on their own name, like their own likeness, and that we finally opened that door for them. Like, while I see the benefit of a G League from a team standpoint, I can put my players in the G League that need a little help developing, get some of these young guys I'm not quite sure about, get them some actual minutes of it, not just sitting on the bench to the 12th man, and it makes sense from that standpoint. But with college sort of now almost, with some of these boosters, I think college has become a much more viable place to go again.
Agreed.
And then now if this...
Now they can get paid in a variety of different ways, and it's legal.
It's legal. And then I have another league, in the overtime league that I said, it's even though it's technically probably run by a lot of old white dudes like everything else in this country, it does have Drake. It has, sort of hip hop appeal. It's paying big money. It's, it's about Instagram and, and it's all those sorts of things as the players that are going there. How do you keep the G League as a viable economic model to keep it open if you're the NBA? I mean, not that the NBA couldn't afford.
It's a valid question. I mean, we saw some G Leagues get picked in the first round this year in the NBA.
Right.
Now, will that happen next year with the overtime league? Maybe not. Maybe not.
Because I think between the overtime league
and really the overtime league is going to be it's you might as well call it the one and done league.
Yeah,
it's exactly that's what it's going to be.
That's what it's going to be. But I mean, if it's got a little bit more cachet, like I said, with the the celebrity aspect involved, and they're willing to pay 2 to 3 times as much as the G League. And then if I'm a program like Duke or Texas or whatever, Oregon, any school that has a lot of rich alumni, I can outpay the G League too. I mean, technically,
Mm-hmm.
So I just wonder, like I said, I see what the G League does makes a lot of sense for NBA franchises. But if they're not going to, if they're all of a sudden not something that NBA fans watch. Now, if NBA fans are more prone to watch some of these other sports or other leagues, then, can the G League survive, I guess was my sort of business moment.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, really, the business model-wise, they're not making a lot of money. The teams aren't making a lot of money, but they're using it as a developmental league. And,
right.
Like in Oklahoma City, the team plays across the street from the Thunder. So, you can walk over there and check them out, do whatever. You're not spending a lot of money on, caring about marketing and promoting. You're not doing a lot that way. Whereas the overtime league, if it's going to have a lot of high cachet people, and sometimes you like to go just to see who's there. And if the entertainers are going to be there, that's going to help that part. And it's going to be increased coverage, and they're going to be amplifiers, and they're going to be promoters. Yeah, it could be big time, no question. But again, the impact of the overtime league has been minimized by NIL.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, but both of those things combined, NIL and the overtime league, have really made a struggle. The G League, as you pointed out, the G League in a position to really struggle to get really recognizable talent.
Because it's hard to imagine a Mobley, Jalen Green, or not Mobley, a Jalen Green and who was the other guy that went to? Oh, Kuminga. Suggs was Gonzaga. Kuminga. But I think you had 3 of the top 15 picks all went to the G League to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now there's going to be other viable options to go get paid,
yeah.
Including college. So.
Right. And maybe if it's working out for them well enough, maybe they don't do one and done. Maybe they're making enough money and they're having a good time. Maybe they don't leave after 1 year.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. It's going to be a really interesting year that way, for sure.
I'm gonna take a sharp left turn to Wrestling Minute. Just because something very interesting has happened. I think I've spoken about how AEW has become a viable contender to WWE. Like WWE brought back John Cena for a 6-month stint. They brought back Brock Lesnar. They have The Rock, the world's biggest star, is going to come in and do a little bit more. And it's nice to see the old wrestlers coming back to where they got their start.
Sure.
But they're going all out because AEW has become, they had a moment where they brought back CM Punk, who only wrestling fans probably know CM Punk, but he was WWE champion for over a year. He's very popular. He came back to AEW. And he's been very vocal about how, it's a much more, it sounds like a much more modern Office. And then if you needed one more stamp of AEW sort of becoming mainstream. Do you know who got an AEW belt at their last pay-per-view? NBA champ Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Whoa.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
yeah. I mean, normally, some of the NBA players, NFL players, they show up in WWE, they get their belt to go along with it. They sort of cheer to the crowd, they come out in the hometown, that sort of thing. But it's usually been just WWE. But now Giannis and I think some of the other Bucks were there too, but they presented Giannis with the AEW belt and he was psyched and happy to be there. So I mean is a sign that, there's definite competition. I think that's a sign there's definite competition.
Sure.
So that was our wrestling minute because, it's wrestling.
You get any comments on Jake Paul and the UFC this week?
I like that Myles Garrett said he would kick his ass. Because I think Jake Paul said something to somebody about stick to playing football.
Yep.
And when you fight, first off, although I'm definitely not a fan of the Pauls, they're a bunch of spoiled rich kids that got even richer through YouTube. And they use their money to make more money, which is what rich people do. It's great, good for them. But they're kind of assholes. But they have trained to become legitimate fighters.
They have put the work in.
They put the work in, and I can't take that away from them. But they haven't exactly fought a murderer's row. They fought a couple of washed-up fighters, and then they fought, I love Nate Robinson, but, the scrappy Nate Robinson from late 90s, early 2000s is not the guy that they knocked out in the ring.
No.
And I forget who else the other NFL player they're messing with, but I think they showed the response on Twitter of Myles Garrett with his shirt off, and he was just laughing. So, like I said, I give them the credit because they have put the work in, and for all you think about them in any other capacity, they've held their own in a ring.
Yep.
And they put themselves in front of in front of everybody, and I guess good for them. But I still think this is another fight where they should win. Each Paul is going to win their next fight.
Okay.
Because I still don't think they're fighting. The people they're fighting are either really inexperienced fighters that are over-the-hill professional athletes like Nate Robinson. No offense, Nate Robinson, about the over-the-hill comment. Or they're fighters that are just looking for. You're basically retired fighters that are happy to get a payday. That aren't really taking it very seriously,
Okay.
And somehow, I don't think they've been annoying enough to piss anybody off as far as their paycheck. They're still willing to. They're like, I don't care, I'm getting paid. I don't think they've been, as annoying as they can be. I don't think anyone's taken their insults. I'm gonna pit.
Well, we will watch. I'm gonna jump to the Little League World Series.
Okay.
We're down to 4 teams. We're down to South Dakota versus Ohio, and we're down to Hawaii versus Michigan. And interesting, South Dakota has dominated in the 3 games they played, but they've scored 3 runs, 2 runs, and 1 run. Now, they haven't given up any. But this kid that pitches for them has pitched over 600 pitches. His name's Gavin Weir. He's given up 1 hit in 600 pitches.
No, I am
Got
not.
146 people and walked 1.
I'm not watching. What is this? One of those kids that looks like he shouldn't be in 6th grade?
Yeah, but then when you watch him act and everything, he does act like he's 12 years old.
Oh, yeah.
He looks like he's 12 years old.
Yeah.
So, but he has used up his pitching quotient, his number of pitches and his innings, so he can't pitch in this championship game, and his team doesn't score any runs.
Oh.
So I'm looking for them not to win. He's so dumb. He's the most dominant player I've ever seen in the Little League World Series, ever. But since he can't pitch anymore, and his team doesn't hit, I don't see them winning it.
It is nice they do limit the kids a little bit with the pitching.
Yeah, he's pitched 3 games and he's dominated the 3 games. He's pitched in 2 no-hitters. 3 no-hitters, I think. And he's just unbelievable. But he can't pitch anymore. So, and his team doesn't hit. The one game he hit a 3-run homer. They won 3-0. They won 1-0 on. They got a runner on a dropped 3rd strike. And then they got 2 hits to score him in the 1st inning, and they 1-0. And when he scored the 1 run, I said, that game's over. because the other team's not going to score a run. And that was true. But the Ohio team can really hit, and the Michigan team can really hit. So, and the Hawaii team is very, very solid, both hitting and pitching. So we'll see where it goes. But I think it's wide open because South Dakota's not going to win it. But then, since I'm this definite on it, if you're betting on it, you might want to bet on South Dakota, judging by my track record.
Yeah.
And then in Major League Baseball, the Yankees, since the All-Star break, are unbelievable. I think they've won 12 in a row now. They're in the first wild card spot. They could conceivably catch the Rays and win the division. But they're definitely a force to be reckoned with. They just have too much power and too much offense.
Yeah.
And they've got good pitching. I mean, they're dominant right now.
They don't have a good closer.
They're waiting for them to fade all year. They haven't faded, but the Dodgers are really hot. So the Dodgers and the Giants in that division look really, really good. The A's are starting to fade. The Red Sox have started to fade. The Padres have started to fade. And the Cincinnati Reds have gotten really hot. And so we'll have to see what happens. But the Atlanta Braves look good. Cincinnati Reds look good as a wild card. So we'll have to see. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to see because a lot of home runs are going to be hit.
Yeah. I mean, the Yankees, they don't have a closer, but...
Well, they got Aroldis Chapman, and he's still pretty good. He's not the dominant closer that he was. He still has some hiccups, but, you know, when you're hanging, the number of runs they're hanging up there, it's scary.
Yeah, no question. No question at all. I sadly don't have a food moment this week again. I'm still doing my no sugar, mostly natural foods thing, which pretty much eliminates.
How's that going?
I'd say pretty good. I went full, Roman feast on the Saturday and Sunday prior to. So
Okay.
I'm still kind of sickened by the thought of, a lot of sweets and stuff at this point. So that was my plan, is to go make myself not want it so much that I got to fly through the first 5 or 6 days.
Okay.
And then, I will say we're about to have a hurricane down here in New Orleans, so I went hurricane shopping this morning. And hurricane shopping without sugar is much less fun.
Yeah, you might give yourself an asterisk during hurricane.
Yeah, but as I always just tell clients when I was a trainer, there's always a birthday, there's always a holiday, there's always a wedding, there's always going to be a reason to start next month. And
you know what, Jace? That's who I am.
Yeah.
That's who I am.
That's most people. I mean, it's so simple, but if you just open up a normal calendar, even if you had no friends, there's always something happening every month where you could be like, you know what, next month is the month I'm going to start. Or, so it's either something you do or you don't do. And I'm also the kind of person where I can't, my goal is to eventually end up at a 5 and 2, where you have 5 clean days and 2 days where you can kind of eat whatever you want, but without going, too crazy. But I have to schedule my 2 days, because I've learned in the past that it just being an open, well, there's friends in town, I'm going to go out to eat on Wednesday. I have to say that Saturday and Sunday are the days and no other days count, because otherwise I'll do 3 or 4 days during the course of the week.
Well, I had a bad dinner, so I'm going to talk about a negative food moment.
Nice.
I love Capitol Grill, and I love Ruth's Chris.
Yes.
And then the other player is usually Morton's. And the last couple of times I went to Morton's, I've always been disappointed. So I was in Cleveland, I was tired, I was staying in the Terminal Tower, and there's Morton's right there. So I thought, okay, I'll go to Morton's, and I had dinner at Morton's. And my steak was okay. My mashed potatoes were terrible. My asparagus was good, but how hard is it to screw up asparagus?
You got to work at it to screw it up. Yeah.
Got to work up. And the highlight of the meal was the onion bread kicked it off. That was the highlight, the bread.
That's not a good sign.
So I'm done with Morton's now. I'm off to Morton's forever and ever. So they just can't. It's just not as, I got a Capitol Grill. I'm always very, very happy. When I get Ruth's Chris, I'm always very, very happy. And I think it's 3 in a row now with Morton's that I've been disappointed, so I won't be back.
Well,
But this week I'm in Seattle, and I'm hoping to have some really good salmon and some really good other things. So I will post pictures and I will comment on. I've got 3 dinners lined up in Seattle with former students. So I will post some food on Twitter and Facebook, and I'll report on it next week.
Well, you know what? I'm going to continue I have seen some of the local restaurants down here complain about, obviously, the living wage that they don't want to pay. But what I've noticed is certain restaurants that pay a living wage or better than a living wage, which means over $15 an hour, are good restaurants.
Yeah.
And I like Bearcat is one that you've been to down here. I mentioned on the
Yeah,
podcast
Bearcat.
numerous times. They pay well over $15 an hour, and if you try to get in there, I mean now it's a line well around the corner because of the 6 feet distancing. But like from the moment they open on a Saturday or a Sunday, they have a line out the door. Most weekdays there's a small line just to get in. And I guess my lesson to the restaurants that because we eat out a lot. I mean as a family, I would say over the years the Suttons,
Yeah.
and there's just a lot of mediocre restaurants.
There
And
really
maybe,
are.
and maybe the reason you can't afford to pay your staff is because you don't have a line out the door because people don't like your food. Because I understand if you make a breakfast place, like breakfast has, if you don't buy good bacon, good eggs, good toast, like breakfast has a really high, but you can make it really high. You make a big profit margin, and pizza's the same way. If you use, bad ingredients, you can spend $3 on a pizza, get $12 for it. That's a huge margin. It's a big margin. But if you're just making
Pancakes are a great breakfast staple, and you can make great pancakes. Or you can make mediocre pancakes.
But I feel like
Great pancakes, I'm happy to pay for them.
Exactly. But I feel like over my lifetime, I feel like I've seen the New Yorkification, San Franciscoification, New Orleansification of the rest of the country, where there used to be food cities, and not that they're not great cities for food, but that now whether you're talking about Tampa or Orlando, like these over the last 20 or 30 years, enough small places have popped up that do food really well. And
Yeah.
now, I used to work at a chain restaurant, and 2 years into working at the chain restaurant, 3 other local independents popped up, including the Hangar, which we've also mentioned. And they just made better food. And that's why you were struggling, because your food wasn't that good.
Yeah, there's just too much competition. You can't be mediocre.
No. Because I feel like a lot of the
You
people...
can't be mediocre now because of social media.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people complaining that they can't afford... And I'm like, well, you can't fill up a restaurant. Like, don't worry about not even being able to pay your employees. Like, you don't make good food. So...
Yeah.
But that was my food rant, so that's good.
Well, and I was in Cleveland this week, and I always say Cleveland has the best mustard in the United States.
You do say that.
So I bought stadium mustard and I bought ballpark mustard, and I'm really enjoying them. So, but that's what I've got. Entertainment moment. You know what? I watched Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. He had a really interesting thing on collectibles and trading cards and hot shots and everything else. It was very, very interesting. So if you get a chance to watch on HBO or stream HBO Go, whatever you want to do, HBO Max, the Brian Gumbel thing on collectibles, which was the last episode of that segment, was really, really good.
Well, I guess on a tangent to that, I didn't qualify for it because apparently I've not bought enough moments. But on the NBA Top Shot, the NFT NBA program, today was the first packs of WNBA players.
Oh, interesting.
And I did log on to buy my pack for $9, but I haven't collected enough moments. I just haven't really been buying very much. But I was not allowed to buy the first packs of WNBA players. But it's exciting to see that as well. So.
Yeah, it is. Well, which division are we going to cover next week?
Well, I think it's the NFC North. Actually, I think, is this close to the season? Maybe we go NFC, AFC North both. And do
Yeah, we better do 2 next week. Let's do that. Let's do it NFC and AFC North.
Because it felt like we had a little bit more time.
So let's do that, and we'll do then the next week we'll have to do, do we have time to get the other one in before the season starts?
We better look. We might have to do all 4 next week.
We might do all 4. We do a longer show.
But we'll just do an all football show for the most part.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think anybody really cared about the Laurie Markinson, Larry Nance trade today. We sort of skipped over that one. But,
Yep.
I mean, I
All
hope
right,
Laurie
everybody,
Markinson
have a
doesn't
good week.
suck.
Mask up. I did get my third boost. I got my booster shot this week, thanks to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So thanks to them for getting me in the Cleveland Clinic, as I was at the 8-month mark with my original vaccine. So I'm excited about that. And I'm headed up to Seattle, and I'll report from Seattle.
Yeah, and, hold out, fingers crossed and prayers if that's your thing for Louisiana and the Texas area that's going to be hit by this.
Hurricane, yeah. And a shout out to Chase Jones. I'll be reporting on soccer next week for the first time.
There you go.
All right, everybody, peace out. Take care of yourselves.